Yeah, we're here again at another episode of Boardroom to Startup. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited. You guys, I'm always very excited about all the guests that we bring on the show. I met Chimez on LinkedIn. So it was a very funny story. I just saw a post and I was like, oh wow, who thinks like this? This is quite interesting. And then I kind of like followed the breadcrumbs, checked a lot of other things about him online. And I discovered this concept that he calls business as a baby, or this framework that he has used. I hit him up on LinkedIn and I'm like, hey, let's talk. And it was actually quite insightful, many of the things that I was able to get from our conversation. So I was like, hey, you know what, you have a lot of valuable information, right, that we try to tell many of our clients, we try to talk to many people about. Why don't you come on the show and let's see how much of that information we can pass on to our audience. So I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
How you doing today, Lola? Yeah, it's Chumsy. Chumsy is real like inside joke because sometimes we even crack that joke. But you can do but Chumsy for sure. So
Okay.
yes, yeah. So about the framework, business as a baby. Well, it started a long time ago. So about it's almost 10 plus years ago in college. I was flipping college textbooks. So I used to do this textbook arbitrary business. I do textbook arbitrage. I'll buy a book for like $10, and I go back to the bookstore and resell it for like $100 online. So
Hmm.
I was like maybe 17, 18. I was making about 2 grand every week, every 2 weeks sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was
Hmm.
my money. I was building that business. So in that moment, I was like, okay, you know what? After graduation, I studied computer engineering. I was in Huntsville, Alabama. So after graduation, I was like, you know what? I want to scale this. I'm thinking I'm the next Jeff Bezos. I want to build an e-commerce platform for college students to resell their textbooks to each other. And that's when I got the biggest shock of my life. You see,
Hmm.
what I did, I had the best laid plans. I went and tried to build business plans. When I say business, I'm talking about 60 pages. I'm talking about 5, 10 years. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. I need funding for this. I need that. I need this. I need that. I left a lot of things on the table, such as I should have gone to corporate America. Build some
Mhm.
works, built a cash flow at that time. So when I did all those things, right, put a team of people together. I'm telling you, this was interesting. So along the way of that, the whole thing didn't work out after 4 years, right? Because I kept on trying and trying and trying to keep going, right? Then fundamentally, I was asking myself, okay, is it because I outsourced the work to be done, the product? Where did
Mm,
the fundamental root cause? Because I usually introspectively reflect. So
mm,
whenever situations occur, I always ask myself, what went wrong? Why did
mm,
it happen? What could I do differently? But these are thoughts I'm having in my head. It took me a year to come to the realization that, oh, I see what I did wrong. Fundamentally, the thinking I used to try to solve the problem, as a business person, because you're going with the thinking that you see maybe, everywhere else with what you studied, with what you've done and what you've implemented. I realized at that moment in time, the phase at which that business was a baby. So what
mm,
I tried to do was premature scaling, and I tried to manage a baby company like an adult. So I
mm.
started thinking to myself, I started equating it to like newborns and stuff. And I'm like, okay, you know what? If you think about, and I was impatient. That was the fundamental flaw. Impatient.
Patience.
That was
Yeah.
really
Mm,
impatient. So I started thinking like a newborn. I started
mm,
thinking to myself, I was like, you know what? Let me take a step back and really think critically. I see my friend one day, he's with his kid. This is when I'm in Austin, this years later, and his baby throws everything on the floor. And instinctively, he composes himself.
mm,
He doesn't react. But
mm,
obviously, as an adult, the response would be different, right? Why are you acting like a baby? But he realized that's a baby. So now in those
mm,
moments, you're with a baby business. So why
mm,
don't you manage your baby business like an adult? And that was where the whole thing came about. Then I used that framework called the BAB framework, and it's trademark today, to consult for customers and offer things like staffing, software services, um, AI, marketing, research, and various things as a consulting firm. Because various today's consultation is based on managing adult companies. So nobody
mm,
looks at you at what stage of your growth that you're in. So because of that, I came up with BAAB. Is either your business is a baby, which is
mm,
survival stage. Now,
mm,
toddler is after your baby has survived. Business is
mm,
a is really when the real business really starts.
Mm.
You see, as a toddler business, you not have full understanding of your customer, the psychological demographics. You gotta have a deep understanding. As a baby business, it's not about how much revenue you made. It's about understanding what direction you should go to.
You should go
Once
to.
you have that understanding and the business has survived, when I say survive, can you pay for your fundamental expenses without you? And I'm using the word fundamental, very critical. Fundamental.
Mm.
I'm not using the word expenses like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, I got it.
yeah.
Mhm.
So now when you become a toddler, that's the point where I would advise if you want to raise funding or things like that, you should. Because you don't raise money to survive, you should raise money to thrive. You
Mm.
have that
Mm.
thinking that you're supposed to need funding to grow and thrive, then you haven't arrived yet.
You haven't
Unless
arrived
you
yet.
own
Yeah.
a VC fund. So you know exactly where to put it in and bring it out. So a toddler company, you're thinking about thriving. That's where you now start creating the systems of a real business. You see, the
Mm.
mistake people make is they start trying to create the systems when they're a baby.
Mm.
And then the
Mm.
things you learn along the way when you're a toddler company, relationships,
Mm.
financial controls, and negotiation strategy. Then you really have to use your wits, your wisdom, and you have to use those three things, understanding those three things to actually create those systems that's going to be long lasting for you in the long run. So now,
Yeah.
after you become a toddler and you advance, then you become a teenager. Now, majority of companies in Nigeria, in so many parts of the world, they are teenager companies. They make a lot of money. These guys are making millions of dollars in revenue. However, what they lack is system and control. So a teenager company has a lot of money, but they don't have structure. So if they say they want to hire like 50 people tomorrow, they won't
Mm.
even know how to go about it without pulling teeth. Or we got to do payroll here. We got to do this. So it would be like a bunch of spaghetti kind of systems. But they're making a lot of money. They're one of the most difficult clients to consult for because
Mm.
a real life teenager, they have money. They have adult, have kid. But because they have the freedom of an adult with the resources they have, they feel like their business. I mean,
Yeah, did everything.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to do with revenue. It has to do with system. Someone could be
Mm.
making 10 million, $20 million a year, and they're a teenager, while another company could be making 2 mil and they're an adult because they have a system in play whereby they can control their their profit margin, they can control how they want to go, how they want to grow, or how they want to be stable. And they're
Mm.
okay. They know that okay, XYZ time, I'm gonna get XYZ income, right?
Mm.
Teenager companies do is that they go through identity crisis. Like real life teenagers, you dye your hair yellow, you go bald, you do some things, different stuff as a teenager. So they try to launch different products in different markets, but it doesn't add to the bottom line. See, I had a customer of mine that I was consulting for, was one that pushed me to even write this book. This is but he went through a process where, like a real teenager, where they were spending money on things they were not supposed to be spending money on. So I called
Mm.
him and said, fundamentally, what brought you to this teenager phase? Their ability to go write and secure their contracts and things like that. Eventually, they eventually grew and stabilized that system, building AI tools to be able to automate writing those contracts. I said that's how you get there. When you become an adult in that space, then if you want to launch multiple babies or try other things, then you
Yeah.
can do that. Now, when you're an adult, you have the companies of this world, the Googles, the Facebook,
Mhm.
those are giant, adults. But you also have adults that are not the Googles or the Facebook. You have a restaurant owner that owns like 5 or 10 chains,
Yeah.
are actually structured, and they actually, deliver the same meal across um, different locations. And it's
Locations.
the
Yeah.
taste that you get, right? You have those. So it's all about, do you have a proper system? When you're an adult company, you can literally pull yourself out of the company and insert another person inside to take the helm and give them the blueprint, and they can continue and carry on. That's a
Mm.
you start thinking about legacy. You start thinking about acquisitions. You start thinking about maybe mergers, maybe,
Maybe
maybe
as you keep on going through it, yeah.
mergers, or I call it marriages. Teenager companies do a bunch of, sometimes they merge and become adult together.
Yeah.
Companies, you start thinking about, okay, you start thinking about business like the way a business should be thought about. It's all about war,
Mm.
strategy, dominate, do this, do that. Then you have the capacity, the resources, the insights, the hindsight,
Yes.
to be
Yeah.
able to now make those type of moves. Then you start thinking from that high level strategy. So the mistake a lot of people make is they use adult level thinking
Mm.
try to manage baby companies.
Mm.
So for example, I've been in a situation whereby someone reached out to me, they had a product and they were saying TikTok is making billions or they had an idea. I said, why are you comparing yourself to TikTok?
TikTok.
Just because you have that mindset already, you're in trouble. Don't even look at what TikTok is doing today. You got to go back in time and try to figure out what they were doing years ago. And then from there, you can now be able to develop and see, what's going on. What did they do as a baby? But at the same time, as a baby too, there's also environmental factors. What era did they develop what they're doing versus now? So a lot of times people are not really looking at so many different things or saying that, oh, maybe someone wants to start a streaming service. They say Netflix is doing this. If Netflix is doing this, right, that's Netflix of today. If you go back in time to when Netflix started, it took Netflix 10 years when they started before they transitioned into streaming. And it took a longer time before they gained whatever they gained. But as they were doing that, the ecosystem was growing. iPad, faster internet, data, all of that. So sometimes, sometimes your product or your service might not be ready for the ecosystem available. So you're not in the right timeline. And that's okay. But sometimes, it's okay. You have to recognize these little things and try to have a deeper understanding. So that brings that whole BAB framework. So if I'm talking to any business, instinctively I try to position, are you a baby, toddler, teenager, adult? So once I position that, then the way I will talk to you is different. I'm talking to someone about their baby, it makes it easy to communicate because on those moments you're very close to that baby business. Personal. So you have to be careful how you deliver your messages.
So
that is their baby. That's it.
Yeah, really, really good. I know you can talk all day about this stuff. And it's always so exciting to hear. When I read the book, I think one of the things I found most fascinating is that, a lot of the information that you shared in the book, for many people might actually even be common knowledge. We know all of these things, but your ability to be able to put them in a way that is easy for people to digest and actually relate to everyday occurrences, right? Like at some point, every single person has interacted with a baby, whether you have a baby or, you have somebody close to you've interacted with a baby. And there's a lot of knowledge around how babies are, right? Like, so if I'm able to take that concept that I'm already aware of and I'm able to kind of like relate that to the startup world, it just changes the perspective, of so many people. I know, for instance, we do have a lot of clients that are coming in from the corporate world, and they typically would want to follow the same process, right? Like they had in their corporate organizations, the Fortune 500, like they will say the adult companies, and they want to bring all of that in. And then, sometimes as well, I'm having conversations with, people that have these $1 million ideas, right? They have these really, really big ideas, and they're like, no, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and they're creating these really, really big pictures, and they forget that the first thing is just, hey, you're still a baby.
Yes, surviving.
Thank you. That's where I was coming to. Like, no matter how, as a parent, no matter how big the dreams you have for your child to play in the NBA or to be the next Steve Jobs, as long as that child is a baby, the child is a baby. There's nothing you can do about that.
I know these big corporations that you see today once started as a baby business. A lot of times people, they started from somewhere. They really started little. If you go back in time and really go deep into how things started. So, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. So just to come down to that, let's not just break it down a little bit.
Okay.
If I have, I painted two scenarios, right? First, I have these corporate folks that they work in large companies, they manage really large budgets. And back to your point, you're an adult company, you can make really big decisions, right? Now you want to start up, right? You have an idea, you want to start up. What happens? What are the things that you're supposed to do? What are some of the things that you should immediately begin to pay attention to at that point? Again, just following that mindset shift that needs to happen, that as a startup, this is a baby.
Okay, so I will give you a scenario. I don't know if you know Jack Ma from Alibaba. He was saying something. He's a billionaire, right? Was saying something when they raised money for Alibaba at some point. They hired a marketing exec. So now when they hired a marketing exec, he came in, they had raised maybe 4 or 5 million. He came in and did marketing plan for like 10, 15 million, right? And He's like, we raised $5 million. He said, well, that's the only type of marketing plan that I know how to do. He said, that's the type of marketing plan that I know how to do. That I do this marketing plan for $1 billion company. He says he's never done anything less than 20, 30 mil. So you're going with the framework of systems, billions, unlimited resources, right? First thing first, you got to understand that's a baby. So imagine a baby, right? Second, another scenario so people can understand this stuff. Imagine you take a college professor or university teacher to go teach kindergartens. How do you think it will flare? Because they can communicate back. So trying to use that same mindset to teach the little babies is not going to work. So what I will advise them to do is to exercise patience. They have to be patient with that baby. They can't do that thing where they try to create systems, move left, move right, or we got to have these controls. We can do this and that. No, what they're learning the baby business, and the baby business is learning them. So you're on a learning phase where you're learning your market, learning who your customers are. When you get your first customer, you don't go and you jump up and say, okay, I want to get 10. You call and ask, why are you using my service? Why are you using my product? Why are you paying more money for this? You need to understand those things, understand those benefits. And then you get the next one and the next one. The goal at that point of time is understanding the baby cycle. Okay, baby, when does the baby want to eat? How does the baby want to feel? You don't put negative pressure on that baby business, right? Which a lot of people do. And you understand that because it's a baby, this business as a baby is not supposed to look after you. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to generate XYZ revenue so that I can leave my job, you have to take that mindset away as a baby business that survived. That you need to get it. That's a different story. It's when you're a toddler, you can start thinking of your plans because you have a foundation to build on the systems to create. But while as a baby, you're just more testing, understanding, exploring, learning how to walk. You don't run before you crawl. You fall down 100 times like a baby, and then you get up again, and then you go again. But you're managing,
and there's no shame in it.
So if your expectations are, oh, I'm gonna make $1 million or 500 grand, 100 grand, you are gonna be in for a rude awakening. You're gonna because then when the reality hits, because you didn't those expectations, you're gonna be so sad. And then those kind of things and impatience will now force you to now make bad decisions. And that negative pressure now puts you in a pickle. And then from there, you probably start pulling out of your savings and everything. Before you know it, you're stuck in a bind. And next thing you know, you're in a hole. I've been there. So I've experienced it. I know.
You know what you're talking about.
Been there, lived it, seen it, felt it, experienced it. So I know what you're gonna be going through. So what's as a baby, for example, if someone has a family and they're in corporate America, the family income from the corporate money is stabilizing the family. Don't fall for that Hollywood fallacy. A lot of times, Hollywood fallacy. A lot of these people probably had exorbitant savings, trust fund babies, funding from somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's the reality of building a business. It's far more nuanced. So when you're coming from the corporate, the only thing you gotta do, you want to talk about large business plans and stuff. No, you just want to talk about the product. You want to understand your product, understand why you're launching it, understand why people need it, product or service, and then just start small, baby steps. Keyword is baby steps. So they make baby steps while still having their regular income or regular source of this. That's the other reality. On baby, it takes time, but don't even think about the baby waiting to survive. It's okay. It's when it's toddler you can start thinking like that. And business can go out of business at any stage. Things happen. But however, the goal is to manage your expectations.
From the start. One of the most profound thing that I've heard from this conversation is just like, one, you can't expect your baby is dependent on you 100% as a baby. As a toddler, they begin to get some level of independence, just a little. They can cry by that, but a baby is 150% dependent.
And as a toddler, you hire your first babysitter, your first employee. Which is the most crucial hire you ever make in your business. The first
And so you cannot expect a
Yes.
lot from your baby at that point. At that point, you're just
Yes.
giving, you're just giving, you're just giving. It's soaking
Yes.
up a lot from you, and definitely you will feel
Yes.
frustrated because it could be quite
Yes.
draining. And part of things that you're saying is, hey, have a
Yes.
cushion, right, before you get into this
Yes.
business. You can keep your corporate job, you can, have some savings or anything, but
Yes.
know that once you start and your business is still a baby, it cannot
Yes.
feed you, it cannot
Yes.
support you at that
Yes.
stage. Now, I know we're probably getting to the end of it, but there's a question that just comes to mind, is like, is there some sort of like time frame or some sort of like indicators that help people know, okay, now I'm moving away from the baby stage, now I'm moving to toddler stage, right? That there's some indicators there, and then is that just like some sort of like standard
I,
timelines? So for instance, like, if I'm a baby for 6 7 years, I've already
I
failed,
will say this, right? I want to use an example of I will say there's no timeline. There's no timeline because
Mm,
it's all about like milestones. If you think about it from this angle,
okay.
you could be a baby company today, and the next month you get a big contract that takes you from a baby because now you've survived on that contract. Maybe service business, you get a government. That happens a lot. That happens in, you get a contract that has put you from baby to survivor. Now you can survive on that. It could be a baby business and you get VC funding. Now VC funding
Mm,
prematurely puts you in survival, and that's really dangerous because most of the time, a lot of seed companies they don't make it to Series A because they never learned how to survive. So now, because you survived
mm,
off VC money, and I say money gives you superhuman stupidity. There's a clause in my book. And because you survived on that VC funding and you didn't learn how to survive, when you become a toddler
mm,
and when you go into a crisis, you usually sink because you don't have survival
mm,
skills. Now, what else is
mm,
like? There's no
mm,
timeline. It's all about milestones. So milestones, for example, as a baby, realistically, can that baby business fund your living expenses, your fundamental living expenses? Don't get me greedy and say, okay, you want to get big. No, like fundamental food, clothing, the necessities. And can the baby business operate without you putting your own income inside it at that point in time? I really the type of company you can pay for
mm,
basic expenses, marketing, and this. Now, have you reached that level? At that level, you're like, okay, you know what? I need to, and then at that level, you're thinking, okay, I need to raise money to do X, Y, Z, right? You survive the transition to a toddler, but you know exactly where to put it, how your customers will
mm,
pay. When you've reached that level
mm,
confidently and metric wise and fact wise, you will see it. Then you can now say, okay, you know what, now I'm a toddler. And then the last one is the business survives so much that there's a lot of work here and there. Now you have the resources. You have the resources
mm,
You have the
mm,
resources, right, to hire your first
mm,
babysitter. Your- That's what I call it.
mm.
So once
You feel like your first employee.
then yes, now toddler companies, right? When you're transitioning to teenager, right? You've had some employees, they're generating revenue,
Mm,
right? But now let me tell you what's going on. You can't keep up with like maybe payroll sometimes because it's too much. At that point in time, maybe you have maybe a lot more contracts, but you don't have the resources to handle it. So now you're
mm,
transitioning to
mm.
teenager, right? Because you're growing too big in your pants. Yes. Then
Already.
you have
Mhm,
money, then
mhm.
you're thinking, okay, let's try to launch another product because you have disposable, and it doesn't add to the bottom line, right? Then you don't have operational
Yeah.
controls, financial controls. You might have some of that, but you have certain. You can't predict if things like employee life cycle. You can't predict certain things. You can't predict why somebody. Yeah,
Have a lot
yeah,
of
yes,
data, you don't
yes.
have
So you
stuff.
have to just organize yourself and structure yourself. Then when a teenager is transitioning to an adult, they've reached a point whereby they can basically control their profit margin if they want to. They can
Mm,
basically,
mhm,
make decisions like long run and short run. They can basically streamline their approaches if they choose to. And it doesn't really they can say,
mm.
you know what, next year let's cut down 5-10%. Let's see if we can do and they will hit those goals and those targets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have
They can say,
more.
you know what, let's go buy this company and then we'll integrate them for this. I'll give you another scenario. A teenager company, they bought a company, but because they were still teenagers, um, they didn't have the proper infrastructure system to keep up with that absorption.
Mm,
It's like teenage. like teenagers doing some things that they're not supposed to be doing. They're living
Mm,
so these milestones is not really timeline because you can go from baby to
mm,
adult in like 3-4 years. You can go from baby to adult in 10 years. You can go from
mm.
baby to adult in 5. It's not timelines.
It's
And
not time.
it's not really
Yeah.
and revenue. I'll say revenue, yes, but I'll say revenue, yeah, because your expenses. But I won't really say revenue for like adults because you can be an adult making two,
Mm.
3 million, and you can be a teenager making 10, 20 million, even 100.
Yeah, it doesn't
But
really matter. It's about the
yeah, yeah,
structures and the
yeah,
framework that you
yeah,
already have, systems
yes,
that you already have in
yes,
place. Wow. Yeah, that's really good. I guess the last question I wanted to ask is, you keep emphasizing this word
yes,
patience, right? To get through this thing.
yes.
Number one, we've established the fact that there is no timeline to this thing, right? Like, so you don't have to rush and be like, I've stayed at this
Mhm.
stage for a long time. How can I be patient when I have $1 million idea, right? And it's just like, I want this thing today. I need to set up the infrastructure. I need to set up everything. This is a $1 billion idea. How can I really be patient through that kind of
The thing is,
process?
first of all, understand that it is a baby. So just once you keep that in the back of your head, it's a baby. Now put yourself in a perspective. Would you gonna be roughing up your baby nephew or your baby if you have kids? I mean, no, I need you guys to grow right now so you can. I read a chapter from my book, Patience,
Okay.
Understanding Patience. Patience is more than the ability to wait for something to occur. It is a complex
Mm,
skill that requires inner stillness and vision.
Can you read that again? Can,
Patience
can you come again?
is more than the ability to wait for something to occur. It is
Mm,
a complex skill that requires inner stillness and vision.
wow. Wow. Inner stillness
Yes.
and
So
vision.
basically, your head,
Mm,
right? You're seeing that $1 billion idea, but you have to pace yourself, right? And then you're living
mm,
in the future too much, right? But you now have to be in the present. And then you have to stand still. What do I truly have as physical? Because what's going on as entrepreneurs is that we're coming from the frequency of a different frequency where we're trying to bring what that vision in your head and you're trying to manifest it
mm.
in this reality. So during that process, right, you get impatient or whatever it is, where you have to let to just calm your nerves and just relax, calm. You make your
Mm,
moves. You throw in what you're throwing in. You watch it. You look at the reaction, the response, the observation, and you take your time and you go. Yes, you're stuck with $1 million idea, $1 billion idea, but it's not really about the idea. It's about the execution.
mm. About
It's about
survival.
the
Mm,
execution.
yeah, it's about the execution of that idea.
That,
Yeah,
that comes
yeah.
down to execution. Everybody has great ideas, but how many people can implement them?
Mm, I don't
Yeah,
even want us to get into that conversation.
so yeah,
We're not going to
this
deviate.
is not baby conversation. This is a toddler, teenager,
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, you're very spot on in the fact that it's all about execution. So even if I have $1 million idea and I'm all going outside, if I don't execute it in a very systematic and
yes,
deliberate path, then I'm not even going to get to that, right? If it's there's this thing like an average idea with
yes,
excellent execution is likely to be
yes.
successful. But a great idea with super poor execution, no matter what you do,
But,
is just going to
but
fall flat. So,
one
yeah, go
thing,
on.
that execution doesn't start when it's a baby. It starts when
Mm,
you baby is survival.
mm,
You now
mm,
start taking execution as a
mm,
toddler. That's when the real business starts. That's
mm.
where that business as a toddler. When I write it, that's when it really begins.
That's why we really begin to unpack more around like
Yes,
this execution bit.
yes.
Wow. Wow, wow. Insightful. Okay, so we're wrapping up now. What are two things that you want to leave with the
I
audience
would say
today?
I'll read a chapter from the end of Patience because at the end of each part of the book there are reflective questions for people to reflect.
Yes, yes. Great
So I'll read
questions.
them
Yeah.
out. Now I'll read two of them. Are you spending too much time dreaming about future success? How can you
Mm.
refocus on present survival? The second one, in which areas of your business do you find it most challenging to be patient? Why do you think these areas are particularly difficult? Yeah, so there
Mm.
are five of them, but I'll
Mm.
read two. So if you want, I can keep going for the five.
No, no, just go on.
Number
Yeah.
three, how has impatience affected your business decisions in the past? Now reflect backwards. What were the outcomes and what did you learn? What strategies can you implement to cultivate more patience in your day-to-day business operations? Reflect on the time when patience paid off in your business. How can you apply the lessons from that experience to your current challenges? And it also applies in life too. And number 6, how can you reframe your long-term goals into smaller, more manageable milestones that require patience to achieve? You know, those things. Yes.
The key word, and those are very, as you were just asking those questions, even in my mind, it seems like you are really guilty of some stuff.
You apply your own way. I'm not telling anybody. You reflect in your mind, you know what you did.
I think that they're really deep questions that are also very reflective. As you were asking those questions, I'm thinking like, oh, I have 2 kids. I don't rush them into stuff and have this, even though I have these big dreams and everything for them, I still know that things have to happen in stages, right? I must expose them to the right level or, the right environment at different times for them to be able to get to where they're going to. So one of the key things I believe that you're living with everybody is that patience is just the key. You just have to always remember that patience is the key. If you rush through it, definitely, you're going to come back. You're just
gonna know which lane you're in, where you can speed. There's a time.
Yeah, it will happen. It would happen eventually. Wow, this has been a really, really, really great session. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to also, like the audience and everybody that is going to be at the Boardroom to Startup Summit is going to be happy to also see you, talk to you. You're going to share more about your insights and stuff. So we're looking forward to having you join us. And thank you, everyone. If you haven't registered yet for the Boardroom to Startup Summit in Houston and you're actually in Houston, I think our early bird tickets is already over. So you have to get the standard pricing. It's limited seats, highly curated. Please get your tickets on time, and we look forward to having you. I was
going to say, for anyone that wants to learn more about business as a baby, you just type in businessasababy.com. You want to get over there, you can see more information. And I'll be in Houston.
And I believe the book is available on Amazon,
right? Audiobook. I did the audio actually, so.
Okay.
Amazon, Google Books, Apple Books, everywhere. Just businessasababy.com. You see the link. You can get it from any store that you can get it from. Ebooks, physical book, everywhere. So.
Yeah, and I really love the book because it's also very small and it's so easy to just kind of I think I read it on a flight or something that I was just done. 3 hours. It was and it was easy to digest. It was well broken down. I love the reflective questions at the back because it just really questions your thought process, right? Which I think is very good. Thank you so much for joining us. I had a really great time. Thank you, everyone.